In three, two, it's Tuesday, July 28th, 2020, and this is episode 200. 200 of the TortureCast, the podcast by and for fans of the San Francisco Giants. I'm your host, Chad King, and joining me today, as always, is Eric Nathanson from the burning desert of Nevada. What's up, man?
It's not too bad. It's only 110. Going good. Got Giants baseball. We finally have a distraction.
It's only 110.
Life
I love
is
it.
like normal now.
And then joining us like he did last week, one of the founders of the TorchCast and why he's here tonight. I mean, we're here, episode 200. This does not happen every day. One, Willie Dills Gregory. How you doing, Willie?
I'm good. It's only 82 degrees here in Austin. We have cooled off considerably because it rained. 200. Here it is. I did what you just did, Chad, on episode 1 of this show, which was bring us in. But I got to say, you're doing me proud, buddy. Great job. I'm glad to hear that a lot of the original stuff is still here.
Yep.
We still say boom at the end. We still say bye and for fans of the San Francisco Giants. All these things happened organically at the beginning of this show. And if anybody out there has ever done a podcast, that's kind of the way it works. You start with a general idea, and then as you kind of do the show, the personalities of the hosts come together. Maybe people write in and tell you suggestions, and things start to happen, and suddenly they become traditions. And the traditions here are alive and well. It's very good to see.
No, it's cool because, I joined the show not long after you guys started, but some of those signatures kind of were embedded in my mind. And so not only is it a force of habit hard to break, but
Sure.
I think it was kind of a cool, tradition and an ode to the way the podcast started. And, so we just kind of continued with that.
Yeah, I mean, we got to drop a boom at the end of every episode. There's just no getting around that. That's, you know what I mean? That's, you want to talk about keeping, yeah, it is. It's the TortureCast sign-off. I can't believe it's been 200 episodes. I can't believe I've been around for 100 to 200. And I always, I tell Willie this, and I do. I appreciate him reaching out to me when I was just some small blogger. I'm still a small blogger. Living in Florida.
Now you're a
about
small
the Giants.
podcaster, too.
That's true. I got to update the resume. What is wrong with me? But and I was always glad I became a part of this because you talk about personalities of the host coming through, and you guys always let mine come through, and that's why I've always liked this show, and I hope our listeners feel that when we're podcasting, that we do all get along, and we are genuinely friends outside of just the San Francisco Giants.
Yeah, absolutely. Now,
Gotta give a shout out, by the way, though, to Ben and Mike, who were there for episode 1. Mike, not for that long. Ben, for quite a lot longer. But, that was kind of the reason the show started, is that I was working at Apple. We were all working for Apple at the same time. We were all super big Giants fans. And actually, what's funny, all three of us had to work the day of the Giants actually winning their first World Series title. We were all at work at the Apple store, watching that final 3 outs with Wilson on the hill. Game 5 of the series against the Rangers. And when Renteria hit the home run, everybody went crazy. It was, first of all, it was on every single computer in the store. The game was just on. We've gone around and put it on every single one. Then we all at one point went to the back room for the final 3 outs. So there was basically no salespeople on the floor. I think a couple of non-Giants fans might have been out there. The Giants win, we all go crazy, and we all have to go back to work. I just want to go downtown. I almost thought about okay, I'm just taking off my shirt and walking out because I need to be downtown right now. But I did end up riding my motorcycle down later and everything. But then we realized how much it meant to all three of us, the Giants, and they knew that I was a podcaster, and they were like, okay, we got to do this. And it didn't take that long after that World Series title for us to get this thing started. I don't remember exactly how long, but we started before 2011 season, basically.
Well, so that's what I wanted. That's what I want to get to. So first of all, this is the official episode number 200. Now, it's kind of nebulous, kind of like, how much you love your kids. But this is maybe not episode 200. It's the official 200. We had a lot of bonusodes. We had a lot of interviews. We had a lot of other recordings that went online. So as far as what you can access online as separate recordings under TorchCast, this is actually number 258, which is actually a pretty good number. But it all started with episode 1, way back on June 12th, 2011. And I want to play a couple minutes, if you guys don't mind, just to see what it sounded like for episode 1. Here we go. June 12th, 2011, episode 1.
This is a podcast devoted to your San Francisco Giants.
Strike 3, called! A cutter on the outside corner at the knees. The ball game is over, and the Giants have
all the 2010 highlights, right?
If you're sick of the East Coast bias, this podcast is for you.
The ball game is over. The series is over. The Giants are heading to Philadelphia for the National League Championship Series.
With your hosts, Willie Dills, Mike G, and Ben Lee.
Swing and a miss, and that's it! The Giants are world champions as they come pouring out of the dugout. Circling Brian Wilson, the bullpen, flying in from left center field, dancing, hugging, and celebrating for all you Giants fans, wherever you are. This party is just getting started.
Don't forget your glove, grab some pine, and settle in. This is Torture Cast.
All right, welcome to a brand new podcast. We are calling it Torture Cast. It's a podcast about the San Francisco Giants. My name is Willie Dills, and I'm here with my two co-hosts. We'll start with Ben Lee. Ben Lee, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And Mike G. Mike G, what's up?
Hello, everyone.
So, what is this show? What the hell are we doing right now? We're talking about the Giants.
What the hell were you doing?
And the San Francisco Giants, because someone needs to. Not enough people are talking about them, right?
Nope.
Yeah. Heaven forbid you talk about us after the last year we just had.
Yeah, clearly nobody knows who the San Francisco.
That is. So, look, that's about almost 2 minutes there. But I really suggest you guys go back into our archives if you want to listen to it. It's a little over an hour for that episode number 1. And by the way, Willie, I assume that intro was that you with some sort of filter on your voice, or what was that?
Yeah, I was really into just not notching my voice down like an octave or so. And then there you go. That's instant announcer voice, right?
That's awesome.
But I remember, I didn't. We kind of rushed production on that, and our intros definitely gotten a lot better. But that was still pretty epic to listen to then, because at the time we were just so excited about all of those moments that we kind of just wanted to capture them within that. There was a lot of stuff in there that was like sayings from that era, that period. I guess a lot of them still are. Grab some pine meat is obviously not going anywhere as long as crew goes around. But it's funny to listen to. We were all like, I was a podcaster. They were not necessarily yet. They wanted to be. But it's funny to hear kind of how like muted we sound a little bit. Like we're like, I think we're trying to be professional or come off as broadcasters, but really we just didn't really know what we were doing, and we were just kind of going for it. But it's cool to hear how the first words of the podcast were spoken that long ago, and how much has really changed since then. I actually don't talk to either of those guys anymore, but I follow them on social media, and they're still diehard Giants fans to this day, very much so. And Ben did a lot of episodes with us too.
For sure.
We all know Ben pretty well. So
yeah, very much.
Mike, I did a show with actually in college. We had a radio show together at San Francisco State. So I'd already kind of worked with him a little bit, but I don't think it was really his passion. The Giants are a passion of his, but
just not podcasting about them.
Yeah. Well, of course you guys were muted back then. You like you said, what the hell are we doing here? You didn't know what you were doing just yet. Now we're all just like, yeah, all right. So is it running? All right, let's go. It's a totally different mentality, because you were stepping into by putting that, don't want a podcast with East Coast bias in there, that was
sure.
Yeah.
That was very chip on the shoulder Giants Spanish. It's great. And I love that, because I think that chip on the shoulder is still alive and well on this podcast today. It's kind of funny. And that's where the buy-in for fans of the San Francisco Giants comes from. You started it like that, and that's why Chad and I have continued it, because that's what we are. No matter if we love to write, podcast, go to the games, it doesn't matter. First and foremost, we're fans of the San Francisco Giants, and everything kind of comes after our fan hat is put on.
Yeah, this is the most unabashedly biased podcast about it. Like, it's just I'm glad you guys ultimately decided to get rid of the segment "Why We Will Win It All," but that was kind of a staple, was like just that diehard kind of nature of the Giants fandom at the time. Yeah. I think it's obviously more realistic to realize that, hey, we're in a rebuilding phase, so we don't need to do that every show anymore. But there was a lot of that at the time that was very chip on the shoulder. That's softened with 3 titles for sure.
When you win a title every other year for like 6 years, you're gonna keep that in the show for a while. So I mean,
sure. Yeah. But after a while, that's more comical than anything, right? Like you're trying to figure out what else you can say. That's because there was a time we were saying, oh, because of Matt Cain, and now you're saying you're like,
I once said if the Dodgers plane crashes, then the Giants can win it all. I mean,
now you could say if the Dodgers all catch COVID, right? Like,
now you can. We'll get to that later.
Where's their next Marlins schedule game?
God. So, I was looking it up, and I don't have any hardcore statistics here, but just on the surface, I wondered how many podcasts go to 200. So, Willie, you were, talking about this last week. Now, obviously, the instance you were on, it's a World of Warcraft podcast. They've gone way past 200. Staying in the same, realm, Scott Johnson has this daily show. They're way past whatever. I don't even know, 1,600 shows or something like that. Yeah, but that's obviously way off the charts kind of thing. But on average, according to Castbox, the top 10 or the top 100 most played shows on Castbox have a median episode count of 203, and the top 1,000 most played shows have a median episode count of 191.5. But I also read that only 20% make it to 200 episodes. So no matter what your play volume is. So, I mean, and that makes sense, right? I mean, more than half the podcasts don't make it past episode 1. So, I mean, that's what you're dealing with. But
no, actually, yeah, so I think, though, when you look at top podcasts, it's very obvious that a lot of them make it past 200, because if you're making money from the
you're making money. Exactly.
If it's your living, obviously it's going to have a lot more incentive to go over 200. When it's a passion project, to keep that passion going, and obviously, like, this show is kind of, at this point now, a legacy show where the cast of characters has changed over time. And I think that's true of a lot of shows that are passion projects that do continue that long. The Instance being one of those shows too. The only, host who was on episode 1 of that show is Scott. Everybody else around the cast of characters has changed around him. Absolutely. So it's usually takes like that one person who kind of holds it all together. Chad, I think you've really been that person once I was kind of out of the picture. I mean, really it was just me moving to Austin that took a lot of the ability for me to like be consistent on the show out. But I was lucky that we were you contacted us, and I was lucky to be like, hey, yeah, this guy, let's do this. That it was you who contacted me, because I'm glad that the show's still around. I still like to check it out. You know what I mean? When I don't know what's going on with the Giants, this is where I would go.
Fake it till you make it, except it's been 9 years we haven't made it. But that's okay. No. But I will say that Eric and I have some exciting things in the hopper as far as partnerships and stuff. And this is all stuff we're going to kind of reveal over the next couple of months, pending on the season, see how it goes. But I will say...
It's going.
I know, exactly. Depending on what's going on. We'll get to that in just a second. So just to kind of recap the 200 celebration right now, we want to get in the meat of our podcast. We're just at the crust right now. We've, gotten a lot of great reviews and bad reviews over the years, more great than bad, but I kind of chose 2 from the last year that kind of encapsulated the highs and the lows. And so we're going to start with a comment from a listener. His name is Francisco Moran Jr., and this was in May. He says, quote, "Love this podcast. Great source of San Francisco Giants baseball. I enjoy the format. Once a week with a nice overall summary of the week's games, highlights, lowlights, and what to look forward to. Thanks again. You guys are awesome." And then we have Mitchum22 from last November, when we introduced and talked about the hiring of Gabe Kapler, which, of course, Eric and I were not fans of. So he says, quote, "Can you believe these self-righteous Me Too freaks? So what if Gabe Kapler likes girls? What the hosts Tyler and Todd," I don't know who he is talking about,
right,
"like, besides their right hand? Fuck you, you sex-hating nerds."
See, you haven't really truly done anything until somebody hates you this much.
Oh, I love this.
This is good. Like that. It's what's funny is when you read a comment like this, you might be like, "Oh man, that sucks. I hate it." But no, this is actually when you're doing something right. Is that there's somebody out there who's just like so angry at your existence and like what you're saying.
Oh, I couldn't help.
Wait, who are Tyler and Todd?
That's you guys. This person just wasn't paying enough attention to actually learn your real name.
Oh,
I mean, that makes me wonder,
classic.
did they go download every Giants podcast about Gabe Kapler's getting hired and listen to them all so he could scream at every host?
Maybe.
And he says Gabe Kaplan too, by the way. So
Yeah.
Gabe Kaplan, the famous poker playing
exactly
actor Gabe Kaplan. By the way, are the what was the Giants pod guys? Are they still out there? Are they still?
They're not
shows?
recording. No, they're not. They're not doing the show
Okay.
anymore. No, I still follow them individually on social media and stuff, and they're doing their own thing. But Thomas Todd, he's got his online trivia going, which actually he got into the New York Times about his stuff, which is incredible. He actually was able to write an article, and so he's got a booming business now of running online trivia because he was a master of trivia. He used to go to the Poet and the Patriot in Santa Cruz. I did a couple of shows with him on a sports segment on KSCO in Santa Cruz back in, 14, 15, that kind of time frame. And so he's moved on, and now he's doing that. And then Danny is, of course, a full-time lawyer now, and so he's
he was
really
in law
busy
school
doing
at the
that.
time, right?
Exactly, yeah. So they don't have time for that podcast anymore. So, and that's the other thing that's amazing about this is that despite the amazing run the Giants had, and of course you started this podcast right after their first World Series title, there really hasn't been another Giants podcast that has popped up. Now, that being said, I know there's a couple of the beat writers that have podcasts, but I don't count those because they're employed to do this stuff.
Those
right?
are.
I'm talking about
what I would
grassroots
consider
kind of podcasts
and more of just a radio show.
Yeah,
put
exactly.
into podcast
Marty
format
Lurie,
after the fact.
Pavlovich, Schulman, right? They all have their own podcasts now, which, by the way, started way after we did, or you did. But yeah, they're paid, so we're not. It's all good.
But I think this is one of the things about the podcasting format, which is interesting, is that at one point, nobody with a industry job was doing a podcast. All the podcasts were ground roots efforts, what I mean, that were just, or grassroots efforts that were just starting from the ground up. That's why I mixed those two words. But it was always done by somebody who was trying to get into the world of broadcasting who didn't have a job in broadcasting already, right? And not necessarily even wanted a job in broadcasting, just wanted to do a show, just wanted to do a podcast, right? And a podcast was the way you could do it. It's only, maybe in the past like 5 years now that there's every top podcast now is like a comedian who is already a famous comedian, or an NPR show, or something that comes from an established broadcasting medium. So it's interesting to be still here as a show throughout that span of time, right?
Yeah.
Like at one point, if you were like searching Giants podcast, like there would be only us and Giants Pod who would show up, right?
Yep.
Now you search Giants podcast, like you said, there's all these guys who are beat writers.
And then there are some little ones cropping up like ours around, but they never seem to have the staying power. And that's a pat on our own back. But, honestly, that's pretty freaking cool that we've been able to make it to 200. What did you say, 270 we are at total or something like that?
Yeah, 258 for recordings, yeah.
Yeah, and like you said, to be the independent chugging along, because like Hank didn't start doing a podcast till like 2-3 years ago, and I'm sure the Chronicle made him start doing it. All these guys ended up every time they renegotiated their contract,
you gotta get into
move
some
into the podcast business.
Yeah,
right.
Sure. Well, when I worked at KNBR, and because I worked at KNBR, KFOG, and the Bone were all under one tent. They're all Cumulus Radio, and when I worked there was a very much like a pushback against podcasting. They, everything was on their site that you could find archived versions of, shows that were edited down. And that was actually one of my jobs when I was an intern, was to take segments and like edit them down and then throw them into, it was basically like making a podcast episode, right? And I already knew about what this was and what we were doing with it. But then we would just slap it up on the website. It would never go to iTunes. It would never go, it would never be in this kind of format where it auto downloads to your device and all that kind of stuff. What podcasting really boils down to is kind of on-demand radio, right? From that can be niche. It could be super niche. You could talk about one team and one sport, and you can do that for 9 years, right? And that's fine. And you can talk about one video game. You can talk about one, you can do it on anything. And it doesn't matter because you don't need a massive audience to make it work. And they were pushing back against it. It was literally, like I said, only like maybe 5 years ago where they started to embrace these kind of ideas.
I was just talking about Thomas Todd from Giant Spot. I think his ears are burning. He just posted a comment on our Facebook Live here and said, "Damn, Daniel Zarki and I need to catch back up." So apparently his ears are burning.
So go reconnect.
On a show.
Right, why not?
I know, we should definitely have him on. No, that's pretty cool. Hi, Thomas. How you doing? All right. Let's get into the meat of what we want to talk about tonight. Enough celebrating. We'll do this again at 300 in a few years.
Wait, before we do that, we got to celebrate a couple more names, just real quick.
Oh God, yeah, we
Allie and
talk
Jen.
about other people.
We got to get them out there real quick because they're also a pretty big part of this show for a while.
Yes, and we had Jen on last week, which was fantastic. Yeah.
Yes, but they were, our friends in the press box who would always be willing to come have several drinks and talk about the show or talk about the game and do a show with us, and then have several more, and then several more.
Rest in peace.
Those were some great nights.
Yeah,
some fantastic nights, and Eric got to be there for one of those actual nights.
That's why I've always felt like part of the crew, was because I got that indoctrination my first time ever. These guys right here, like, y'all don't know out there, these guys took care of me. My first trip ever to San Francisco was in 2013, and these guys were just awesome. We were in the press box. I got to do everything. We sat there. Bochy talked about 2-out hits in front of my face. You all know that I'm 2-out hits. We had, like he said, more beer. Chad and I went back. We had even more beer. It was just a great, like, hey, you're one of us now. And I really felt it. It was cool because Giants connected us always. And I was there for a very serious reason at the time. I was there to scatter my dad's ashes that Monday. And then I went to the game the next day. I'm 2-0 in San Francisco, and I think it's the Torture Cast touch, because if it wasn't for that great first night, if it wasn't for, the Giants winning and us all having a great time, who knows? Maybe I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you guys anymore today. Yeah. It's entirely possible. And I'm thankful that I am, because, this is something I look forward to a lot.
Yeah, that was a really, really fun night, and we had basically the entire crew there that night.
Yes.
That was super cool.
Yeah, no, that was great. So, no, thanks for bringing that up. Yeah, I haven't seen Allie in a while, but she's become a new TikTok kind of queen.
TikTok sensation.
Yeah. She's got some great stuff, by the way. I mean, it's just, I think it's, what's her handle? Allie K. Williams or something like that? So, anyway.
So, yeah.
Look for her on TikTok. She's got some really, really funny stuff.
Man. Sorry. Padres.
Oh, yeah. By the way, I know that not too many people are watching tonight because it's our first live broadcast in a while, but also we're doing this during the Giants game, so most people are going to be watching the Giants game. But that's okay. Giants do currently lead 1-0, and wait, is it still 1-0?
They do not. They do not lead.
That was my.
That was.
Yeah.
Come on, man! I'm all the way in Nevada. What's going on? How come I?
That might have been the worst timing ever.
Mm-hmm.
I know I might be delayed on YouTube TV, so I didn't see if you guys saw it earlier. But right when I said that was right before Tatis Jr. just launched a 3-run bomb off of Shark.
To look and he hit the home run.
Yes, I said, well, they're still leading 1-0. Yeah, no, I know you. So I just recently got rid of my satellite TV, and YouTube TV is going to be like 10 seconds behind or something. But yeah, so anyway, that's what Eric was reacting to. So 3-1 Padres right now. All right, speaking of baseball, we had all sorts of things to talk about first, including the expanded playoffs and, of course, the Giants' first series of the year against the Dodgers. However, a more pressing situation has happened. At least 13 Marlins players from their active 30-man roster have tested positive for COVID-19 over the last few days. Additional coaches and personnel have also tested positive as well. So MLB canceled their home opener yesterday and canceled their game today, and then canceled all their games through Sunday. They even canceled the Yankees-Phillies game in Philly yesterday because that's where the Marlins were last. So they wanted to make sure that the clubhouse could be cleaned and disinfected. So, I mean, that's insane. They're canceling a whole week of games for the Marlins, But they are saying right now they think this infection has been contained to the Marlins clubhouse. And it doesn't look like so far, they're still waiting for some tests, that it's spread to other clubhouses as well. But even though they were supposed to play the Nationals after the Orioles this weekend, the Nats players had already voted not to come down to Miami. They would be like, I don't got time for that. So, I mean, this is huge, guys. I mean, this is something that we kind of predicted in the beginning. Eric and I definitely talked about it, and Willie talked about it last week as well. Is what are the chances of the season being completed? What are the chances we're going to even get to the playoffs? I myself didn't think we would get to the playoffs, but I also didn't think that there was going to be a 13-player outbreak 4 days into the season.
Yeah, it's scary. Here's the thing. So they were playing the Phillies, right? So really, that's like the big concern is, did they infect the Phillies? So if they didn't, then maybe it's feasible that we get to the playoffs, because that means that just because you all caught it in your dugout, which by the way, when they pan to the dugout, there's not a lot of masks and stuff, and there's not a lot of people sitting 6 feet apart. So, and I understand that. I understand it's hard to play the game of baseball and be doing that, but it seems like some teams are being a little flippant with this whole stuff. Like once they actually kind of get into their little bubble and they think they're safe, they're starting to like let the guard down a little bit. But if they did not infect any Phillies players, then it tends to lead to the thing that maybe it's not something that's necessarily like, yeah, one clubhouse might get an outbreak, but not necessarily are they going to infect the other team through playing a game of baseball, which is good news for us to actually get to the playoffs. But again, it's too early to really know. They might have infected a bunch of Phillies players, and they haven't tested positive yet. So
it's going to take 5 days for us to find that information out, and that's the key right there. I think it's funny. We talked about that MLS team that had to bail out stuff because their team went down. The Marlins seem okay with trying to deal with this on their own. MLB came out with a statement today and said that the other 29 clubs have not had any new positive cases of coronavirus. It's only the Marlins, so good job, Derek Jeter and Don Mattingly. And apparently they feel like this could be the wake-up call that makes sure that they have a season instead of the thing that derails the season. Now, I hope for that to be true. I don't know. It's like I said it yesterday. How many doctors are on the Marlins roster? Like, how come they were left in charge of deciding whether or not they play when this is not a decision that should be made by the players themselves? Sometimes it needs to be taken out of their hands. I understand that you're assuming the risk as the player, but there's no way that they should have decided. And then like the Phillies clubhouse guys, they don't know until afterwards. They've gone home, they've seen their families. Who else could they have infected after that? Yeah. So this could be the wake-up call that they need. Otherwise, this whole thing is going to fall on top of itself. If there's another team or two that goes down, I think it'll all fall apart. But if it only stays the one team, I think we can get to the playoffs.
Yeah. And what happens actually as far as the win-loss record, if you got all these games missing now, like what do they have a rule in place? Like if you're the team with the COVID infections, you get the loss and the other team gets free wins, or is it just these games just never happen or never replayed?
They never happen.
I think the Yankees and the Orioles, which, the Yankees were going to be playing in Philadelphia, the Orioles were going to be playing the Marlins. I think they set up some mutual agreement where they were going to play this week. And I could be wrong about this, but they're trying to make up games that they were going to play each other into the future to try and make up games against the Marlins into the future for the Orioles. Right. So I don't know if that's going to happen.
Can they do double headers? Do they have?
They can. Yeah. And I think we're going to see that happen. But missing 7 games.
Dumb rules in place, like a doubleheader shouldn't take that long anymore, right?
It should take like 5 minutes. I mean, it's not a big deal.
Well, that is what they're doing with the Yankees and Orioles, and then the Phillies are not going to play for a few days now because they have to wait for test results to see what happens. So the Marlins are straight up paused. The Phillies are kind of on hold, and everybody else seems to be okay. But now is the time stuff will crop up because teams are traveling finally. Half these teams hadn't traveled yet. They're now going places. The Giants were in L.A., then they came home. Like the Cubs were in Chicago. They're in Cincinnati. White Sox were in Cleveland. You know what I mean? It's finally the time. So I think this next week and a half is really the important part to find out if they're actually going to get through this. I don't know if they're going to or not. I really don't. I would like to think so, but how did the Marlins screw this up so bad?
And you mentioned it already, but 3 players were known to be positive on Saturday for the Marlins, but the players communicated via group text and voted to go ahead and play on Sunday. And my question is, how did this happen? I mean, the players don't test each other, right? They don't receive the results directly. Management is involved. The testing agency is involved. So those results come down through them. So how did management allow that to happen? And that's where I think people are trying to figure that out, because it's not like, the lab tested them and then they just text the players and go, oh, you're positive, you're positive, you're positive. And then they all get together and go, okay, don't tell management. Do you guys want to play on Sunday? I mean, I don't quite understand if like Don Mattingly or the GM or the owner or whoever, they had to have known who was positive. And then when they see them walk out on the field on Sunday, I don't know how they let that happen. And so I think there's going to be some shit to fall that we haven't seen yet, because
there's got to be some sort of a commissioner of this situation, right? Like just someone who's like the health expert in charge of all of it, who says, okay, you guys can't play, period, because 3 players.
There's no voting. It's not like, if you have the flu, okay, yeah, maybe you can go play. I got a broken leg. Yeah, you need to sit this one out. I'm sorry. But, you got COVID. Obviously, that's the whole thing. We all know what's going on. It's like, you can't freaking play. You got to stay out. So it's mandatory quarantine. You got to have 2 negative tests, all those things. So I don't know how management let this happen, or how the players even communicated and management was just turned a blind eye. Do they think that, maybe, again, a lot of people think this is a hoax. Let them play. This isn't even real. I don't know, but it's caused a big problem, and it would be interesting to see if the Marlins were the Yankees or the Red Sox or the Dodgers that this happened to, if there would be a different effect on the league.
Well, there should definitely be some sort of a punishment for the people in charge on the Marlins, right? If they're putting everybody else at risk. It's like these players all came down with a case of outward Russian roulette. You know what I mean? Like they're just like, hey, so you guys are all gonna play. Every time you get to first base, take out a gun with 1 bullet in its chamber and see if you kill the first baseman. Yeah. And that's kind of what's happening. So
I know
it's the fact that they didn't then, like, management, like you said, should have been like this isn't a player's decision. It should not be made in a group text.
It should be made. It's above their pay grade.
Yeah, and the fact that they didn't. If you're going to punish the Astros for cheating, you need to punish the Marlins for putting other people's lives at risk, right? So
yeah. But how do you punish stupidity? I'm not trying to be funny. How do you punish stupidity? What do you do? Do you fine them? Do you take away draft picks? I mean, how do you punish stupidity? And if other teams fall in line, we've recognized that when things like this happen, it's a failure in the leadership aspect. And that's made me wonder, and I had a side thought on this. All right, so in the NHL, they have 2 bubbles to play their playoffs. The NBA has 1 bubble, and aside from Lou Williams loving his strip club chicken wings, they're pretty good.
Well, the food in there is apparently terrible, so that's another problem.
Oh, forget it.
Go ahead.
It's strip club food. I mean, and what time of day was it? I hope it wasn't
all his
early
diet
in the
consists
day.
of, though. You got to understand.
But why didn't Major League Baseball go to a bubble? Why are they doing it like this? I mean, I think it's a fair question to ask at this point, because there's no way this would have happened if they were in a bubble.
Probably money, and probably, like the Players Association in baseball is pretty strong. I assume that maybe they argued they didn't want to be away from their family, and they didn't want to be away from, and maybe they argued that baseball was not as much of a contact sport as these other sports. So therefore, we're less likely to spread as long as we do the right things. But clearly, people aren't doing the right things. Yeah. Dan Boots in the chat asked what's the ultimate benefit of playing? I mean, obviously for us, the benefit of them playing is that we get to watch baseball again. For them, it's to get a paycheck. Yep. But ultimately, I don't know. It's like, does the benefit outweigh the cost at this point? Is a very real question.
Yeah, there were a lot of players that signified that they didn't want to live in a bubble because of their families and their kids and, impending children, like Mike Trout's kid that was going to come in and all those things. So I think Major League Baseball definitely was afraid that many more players would have opted out than what they are right now. But, Mike Trout was a surprise, I guess a little bit. He was mulling it over, but, he has a kid due, I think in August or something, or September. but he decided to play. Obviously, we know Buster Posey and David Price and all these other players. So, yeah, I don't know. It's a less of a contact sport, and you see some of the players pulling up their masks, like Pablo when he plays first. He pulls up his masks when a runner comes. But I agree. I see them in the dugout. There's supposed to be no hand-fiving or high-fiving. There's supposed to be no spitting. There's supposed to be no chewing, all that. I've seen it all in the first day.
They're all doing all of that.
Yeah, they're doing all of it. Yeah, they're doing all of it. I mean, yeah, we see the air high fives for the third base coach after a home run, but I mean, most of the stuff. And by the way, if this season continues and plays out 60 games, we're going to see walk-off home runs. We're going to see maybe one no-hitter this year. We're going to see something.
You got to air mob.
Yeah. So when there's going to be that mob at home plate or the mob at the mound or whatever it is, that's going to be really interesting. I mean, it's going to be kind of like, what are they going to do? They're going to like force field it and kind of just, no, I don't think so. I think they're going to, the A's had the grand slam the other night. Walk-off grand slam.
They
and
still doused him and stuff.
They were pretty close. I mean, there was definitely not too much of a social distance. So,
I think the players feel like they're in their own bubble, so they can interact together without spreading it. You know, they're not thinking beyond that moment that we are all thinking of, in that moment. And honestly, I can't blame them. I really can't. I think I'd react the same way.
Yeah, you're in your normal environment with your normal, teammates that you've done this with for years, and you've always done it this way. You've always slapped each other on the ass and high-fived and spit on the field, and you've done all those things forever. The camaraderie of a clubhouse is something that's very hard to then just suddenly turn off in your brain. But like you said, Chad, like maybe this is the moment that needed to happen so that the other 29 teams go, okay, this is a real thing that can really happen. And once it's in our dugout, it can spread to half of the team in a flash, a weekend, right? So, it's tough to say if we're going to get through a full 60 games, but if it was going to happen, maybe it needed to happen this fast and not, halfway through and then 7 teams all of a sudden have 13 players, right?
Yeah, because that's
the fact that it's
one
team just quick.
Yep. All right, so right before opening pitch in Washington last Thursday, Major League Baseball announced that they are expanding the playoffs, but just for this year, at least for the time being. So we all thought, and we talked about last week when we gave our predictions, they had announced that, no, we're just going to stick with the normal playoff format. So this was a surprise to me, but this is how the expansion is going to work. You're going to have 3 division winners in each league. You're also going to have 3 second-place division winners, quote unquote, in each league. And then you're going to have the 7th
participation awards.
Yeah, I know, right? But now the participation comes from the 7th and 8th seeds ranked by record in each league. Yeah. So here's the weird thing. All teams are going to play in the first round. So originally there was a proposal, a couple months ago, Eric and I talked about where they were going to give buys to the first and maybe the first and second seeds, right? There are no buys here. So 1 will play 8, 2 will play 7, and so on in a 3-game series, not a wild card 1-game knockout. However, all 3 games are going to be at the park of the hired seed. So no travel.
So no travel.
Yeah, exactly. So obviously,
do they alternate whose home team visiting as far as
no
batting first and stuff?
I don't think so. Yeah, no, I don't think so.
So if you're number 1, 2, 3, or 4, you are home all 3 games, and you're batting second all 3 games. Now that consolidates the travel and all that stuff like that. Obviously, there's been a little bit of an uproar from people going, okay, well, so you can have a team that wins 102 games, and they play a team that won 86 or 84,
you can play a 4th place team in a division.
Or 80 games, right? I mean, hypothetically, an 8th seed could be sub 500, right? They could have 80 wins, 79 wins, and play a 103-win team. And, hey, look, this is baseball. This is not football. This is not basketball where it's a little bit more controlled. Anything can happen in baseball. Granted, if you play a 7-game series or a 9-game series, things will usually settle out. But a 3-game series, man, I don't care if it's all at home, especially with no fans this year. There really isn't that much of a home field advantage. A little bit, but not as much as if there were fans in the stands. So, look, it's a 60-game season. It's weird. We talked about this. Let the shit fly. Let's see what happens. So I'm not against this.
Wacky.
But I will say, as a Dodger fan, as a Yankee fan, as a whatever Astros fan, one of these teams that is projected to be a number 1 or 2 seed, they're going to be very vulnerable in that first round.
Especially if they. So the thing about like basketball, you're running your same starting 5 out there every day, right? In baseball, you got maybe your ace, your second ace, and then you get down to the 3rd, 4th, and 5th guys, and maybe there's not that much difference between a team that finished in the 7th seed and the team that finished in the 1st when you talk about the 3rd, 4th, and 5th guys in a rotation, right? So yeah, it's very much more, it's baseball is like playoff wise, we the NBA now apparently, but when you talk about baseball, that is not representative. In basketball, generally the 1st and 2nd seeds on each side, they ride their way to the top, and we see the 2 best teams in the finals, right?
Yeah.
Baseball, that's not necessarily the case, and I think a lot of people can make that argument that the Giants weren't the best team every single time they won the World Series. So
certainly not in 2014.
We know what it's like to come in as underdogs and actually get the job done.
Well, getting hot at the right time is always part of this. That's why, as we get into talking about the Giants right now, they looked awful, absolutely awful for the first couple games of the season. But that doesn't mean they're going to look awful in Game 30 or awful in Game 45. So, certain teams that look like crap right now might get hot later. With it being this kind of a season, you really don't know how it's going to be. And then it's like hockey, actually, with the playoffs, because hockey does this weird tiered thing now where the first 2 division winners get in, and then there's 2 other wild cards that play it out. But Willie's right. Some division could beat up on a division on the other league and have all 4 teams go to the playoffs.
Yeah. That could happen. I mean, it's an unbalanced schedule, right? The NL West plays the AL West. The NL West does not play the Central or the East. So you have wild cards coming from different divisions that may have had a much weaker schedule. And so, you definitely could see that happen. But again, I think most of the players, owners, fans have to resign themselves to, at least we're having baseball. Who cares what happens? I mean, this is not a fairly year. It's not. And if the Giants were to win the World Series this year, that's a joke. Would us Giants fans think anything less of that title? No. Would others? Yes. Just like exactly, and that's where our bias comes in.
Going to celebrate it like it's the greatest thing that's ever happened, and 29 other cities are going to be like, bullshit, asterisks, doesn't matter.
Yep, exactly. So if the Dodgers win it this year, we're here to say that's bullshit. So
doesn't really count.
Do when the season's a full season and all the players are playing.
I don't care how much.
That's going to be the argument.
This doesn't count.
Yeah. So, I mean, look, let's be honest. The Giants are 2-2 right now. We'll get into the Dodgers series in just a second. But, the Giants, even in this expanded format, still would not have made the playoffs in 17, 18, or 19. They made it in 16. They obviously would have made it under this scenario. But does this change your mind on, obviously it increases their chances. There's no doubt about that. But do you think it's greater than 50-50? Or less than 50-50 at this point? I mean, I'm going to go first. I'm just going to say still less than 50-50. Even though, technically, more than 50%.
It's more than 50-50.
Even though more than 50% of the teams make it. I know. That's what I'm saying. If everything's equal, they'll make the playoffs. But I don't think everything's equal here.
I put them at 52% to make the playoffs now with this new rule.
There you go.
Right.
I'm at 48, Willie, so close.
I mean, it's 8 out of 15. That's all you got to do is be in the top 8. I do, honestly. I now think that they have a shot, and that's actually why I brought up earlier. You can't gauge how the team's playing based off the first 2 games.
Yeah.
This team could win, 7, 8, 9 in a row at some point because something clicks, and all of a sudden they're in the playoff mix. That's all it's going to take is one winning streak. So why the fuck not the Giants?
Yeah. Sure. No, I mean, we're going to see a surprise team or 2 this year. There's no doubt about that. It'll just be fun. Not the Marlins. They're only gonna play 12 games this year, so that's gonna be hard to get them in.
Surprising us in a different way.
Well, it's gonna help with their winning percentage because if teams don't all finish with 60 games, that's what they go to is winning percentage.
They're gonna be 8-4. They win.
Right,
they're 2-1 now, right? So boom, 66%. They're in there.
That's hilarious.
Shut them down for the rest of the year. They're in there.
Winners! Vegas is going to love the Marlins. All right, so let's talk about the Dodgers. Now, the Giants went into L.A., and we talked about this last time, but the fact is they usually open on the road, and they have 7 of the 10 games against the Dodgers in LA, at Dodger Stadium. They also have 7 of their first 12 games of the year in Dodger Stadium, all those 7. So it just seemed like really up front, it was kind of unfair, even though they have the expanded rosters, but, both teams have that advantage. And the first 2 games, guys, things did not look good. They lost.
They started off great in game 1.
They did after 7 innings.
Blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
2 innings.
Cueto was doing great. He was, he limited a rally to 1 run. Then we went to the bullpen, and then the Dodgers started to show us, these guys are all really good hitters. One after another are raking.
Yeah, no, it was a good game for the first 7 innings. It was very competitive. I was very happy, very surprised, as most Giants fans were. And then it just all melted and fell apart. It was a house of cards. And then they lost the second game 9-1 after the 8-1 loss. So they got outscored 17-2 in the first 2 games. And now we're thinking, oh my God, we're going to get swept, at least lose.
Are we going 0-60?
Yeah, are we going 0-60?
It seemed like a real possibility.
Oh, it really did. But, the Giants, to their credit, bounced back and won game 3, 5-4, and game 4, 3-1. And so they ended up splitting the series.
Game 3, they were up 5-1 at one point, and it was just a slow creep back that finally, gave up the shot to start the inning. And I was like, oh, God, here we go. But, he settled down and got the next 3. So, yeah. It was classic torture.
All on fly balls too, though.
Sure.
Got in
easy can of corn fly balls.
Well, the Giants defense didn't really help them too much this weekend. But, look, getting a split despite being outscored by God knows how many runs, like 12 or 13 runs, something like that. It was fantastic, and then coming back home, even though they are now down 5-1, by the way, to the Padres. So it looks like they might be heading for a loss tonight. But that being said, it was great seeing them, split the series against the Dodgers. Let's talk about who was hot, who was not. So we didn't really talk about the roster. And, when they first announced that roster, even though I knew it was coming, and we don't have to list, all 30 guys right now. But I was thinking about the movie Major League, when the guys in the coffee shop are like, who the hell are these guys? I mean, we're Giants fans. We follow the Giants. And even I was going, I don't know half the roster. This is insane.
Like, I've heard these names, but I have to baseball reference them to know what their history has been, what other teams they played for and things like that. They announced it the day of game 1, right? Like that morning is when we really knew the exact 30-man roster. And it was not a lot of surprises from what we had talked about on the show. But again, there's not a lot of exciting names right now, and that's what's that was what was annoying.
Eric's like, is what? The most exciting player on the Giants.
Beauregard.
Beauregard. I am now the president and founding member of the Beauregardians, which is the Caleb Beauregard fan club.
Beauregardians of the Galaxy.
Beauregard played it. Yep. I needed to come up with something good with Beauregard, and Beauregardians I think sounded good. So
that's pretty good.
I'm starting the official Caleb Beauregard fan club. He went to college at Indiana. He's from Michigan. I did everything I could to learn bits and pieces about him.
Nice.
His family was not around for his debut the other night because they were at a wedding. So they didn't even see him mow. Yeah, I know, right? Forget about that. They didn't even see
having weddings.
They didn't even see him mow through the Dodgers lineup and basically save that game on Saturday Saturday afternoon, because he really did come in and step in there, and so that's why I decided to make the fan club so exciting. I take offense to you saying there's no exciting on this team.
All right,
good sir.
I mean, there's definitely games I'm more excited about now. I mean, the mainstream Giants fans are Heineman fans all the way now, right? Every single Giants fan now is going, this Heineman kid, he's the future.
He's the future.
Buster who?
Yeah. We need to move him out
Joey who?
Because he's got wheels, right? We need to make sure we don't ruin his speed. It's the world's fastest catcher.
Yeah.
Oh man, no,
I watched him play though.
By the way, the most disappointing thing I heard over the weekend was the announcers announcing Beauregard's name. They're like Beauregard, The way they said it was so soft, and I was like,
want a
come
little
on.
more excitement. Okay.
Put a little, inflection into that. It's like
Bargarian. So if anybody out there can connect to Caleb Bargar, his family, tell him TortureCast, especially Eric. I am now the president and founder of the Bargarians. Somebody reach out to me. I am absolutely willing to make merchandise.
No, it's really cool. It's a cool story because he wasn't even initially invited to summer camp, and then he got invited late. He ended up making the roster, and then he's done well in his first couple of innings. So no worries about him.
Well, because you talked about the series with the Dodgers, and honestly, it looked like there were two different levels of baseball teams on the field. The Dodgers were a major league ball club, and the Giants they looked like a pony league team for the first couple games. They really did, and you had to start wondering. It was fair to wonder: is Kapler really the right guy? Is all the things that they're doing this season right? And then they won 2 games, and now it's kind of like, okay, wait a second, we need to give them a chance.
Yeah.
We really need to see what it is. Because, I was thinking about it. Kapler is trying to straddle that line of competing right now because it's a 60-game season, and everybody knows anything can happen, but also developing young talent at the same time. And I think this is why Shark was pushed back to pitch here in San Francisco, because Kapler is afraid of the fly ball pitcher in LA, and he really does want to win right now. And so he's kind of willing to do what he needs to do. And I don't blame him. It's a 60-game season. Go for it. But that's what kind of made it look so stark this weekend. It was like 2 ass kickings, and then suddenly, hey, they're a real Major League Baseball team.
Well, also the Dodgers have a lot more lefties, especially there's a few notables that I think would just rock Samardzija. So
yes,
I think it was the right call. I will say if we're gonna pick guys we're suddenly gonna start fan clubs for, I'm gonna go with Sean Anderson because the ball does not go into play when he's on the mound.
It's true.
He either walks you or he strikes you out, and that's it. I mean, 2 innings, pitched, 5 strikeouts, 2 walks, 1 guy put it into play. Let's go. I mean,
he said he kind of likes his role. Is it raining? Oh my God, it's raining.
Where?
Not here.
Diego?
In San Francisco. No, in San Francisco. We're at home.
Oh, sorry, in San Francisco. That's right. Yeah.
It's
very
raining.
well could be.
That's crazy. Sean Anderson said he kind of likes the role that he's thrown into right now. I think he's the kind of guy Kapler's looking to use going forward. Is a guy who's like, you want me to start? I'll start. You want me to come out of the bullpen? Screw it. I'll be the fireman for one.
We need a lot of guys who can pitch 1 inning or 2 or
agreed.
You know what that like? We need guys who are just like, throw me out 6th, 7th, 8th. I don't care. I don't need to be like the guy in this inning, right? I'm the guy whenever you call my name.
Yeah, I think the players on this team realize this is not a juggernaut team. This is not going to the World Series. They don't have an established setup man. They don't have an established closer. Their starters are not going 5, 6, 7 innings. It's just kind of next man up mentality. And so I think each of them want to just get their foot in that foothold to then propel themselves to either a year or 2 from now with this team or another team to establish themselves in a role. And Sean Anderson, who of course was a starter for the Giants the last couple of years, did come out, and maybe if it's, he can concentrate his energy into 1 or 2 innings as opposed to trying to stretch it out over 5 or 6. There are some players that can do that better than others, and maybe he's more apt to it. It's a small sample size, but he struck out 5 in 2 innings. Maybe
5 strikeouts in 2 innings.
His slider was moving,
his
man.
Are moving too. Yeah, it's not even that. These guys are they can't even see the ball. They're 6 inches a foot away from these baseballs.
Yeah, it was really, really great. So the aforementioned Tyler Heineman was 4 for 9 against the Dodgers. Darren Ruff was 3 for 8, and that was a nice late kind of roster addition. We talked about Sean Anderson, and then Cueto and Logan Webb each had 4 innings pitched, 1 earned run, and then Drew Smyly had 4 1/3 innings pitched, 1 earned run. So they all look good in their starts. And what's noticeable is that Gabe Kapler with a 30-man roster and his propensity for pulling guys a little bit early has been doing that because he has that deepened bullpen. So no one after 4 games has gone more than 4.1 innings. And, I think it was was it a Philly or Cub or who the hell pitched a complete game a couple days ago?
Kyle Hendricks.
Yeah.
Kyle
For
Hendricks
the Cubs.
For the Cubs.
Yeah, exactly. So, the Giants maybe not moving down that road with Gabe Kapler. So.
I predict maybe 0 complete games this year.
Yeah.
Maybe even like 0 8-inning starts. I mean, it seems like he's gonna yank you. Like he's gonna yank, and he's gonna do it quickly, and that's probably gonna be fine because what that means though too is over a short season, no one's gonna be gassed at the end of the year. So
that's true.
That could be a thing where the Giants become a team to be reckoned with later on. Is that we have the freshest arms in the league because of the way that Kapler's managing this pitching staff.
Quantity might actually matter this year over quality because of that reason, and that's why with every game equals 2.7 games. So with that in mind, they're playing each of these games like they're playoff games, and these managers should. I mean, we talked about it. This is 60 out of 162 games. It's less than a half of the season, so it's not even anywhere near what he normally does. And here comes Connor Menez in for his second appearance, and they're not afraid at all to go to the bullpen, and I appreciate Kapler for doing that. I mean, go for it, screw it. I'll be honest, I'm not sure Bochy would be handling the season in the same way, and I'm kind of glad that things ended with Bochy when we had fans in the stands than having to have him go through something like this. So that's why I'm willing to embrace. If that's the way Kapler wants to do things, that's fine, because we need something new at this point.
Yeah.
Well, so Bochy is 67, something like that. I mean, he's definitely more of an old school guy, right? Kapler is early mid 40s.
Yeah,
he's a lot more of a new school thinking guy. He's a lot more willing to, kind of take on this style of baseball, this new emerging style of baseball. That's like it very much feels, he's Brad Pitt's going to play him in a movie one day about a computer nerd telling him how to manage a bullpen, right? Like this is just all about advanced stats and things like that. And you see too, it's not just how managers, new school style managers, are handling pitching staffs, but no longer are shots up the middle, ground balls up the middle, base hits, because everybody is positioned completely differently, no matter what. There's never I can't remember watching where they go to that field shot and everybody is kind of straight away. Yeah. It's just every single time somebody is cheating some direction. And you're seeing a lot of hits and stuff taken away because these advanced stats, it's the new world.
It is. All right, so let's talk about who's not, and first line is who isn't, except for the couple that we kind of announced before. But hey, they're 2-2.
Most are not.
We'll take 500 given this list, right? So the Giants only hit.
They didn't split. It was a sweep. You got. It was
a sweep of the last two games. Yeah, you're right.
That's true. We got swept and then we swept.
We're on
a 7-game winning streak right now.
If the Dodgers were the number 1 seed and the Giants were the number 8 seed in the playoffs, and we played in Dodger Stadium, we won 2 out of the last 3 games. We would have advanced. So there's that, right? There you go.
Nice. Who's not? Like you said, the entire team has only hit 215 in LA. But it is early. I'm going to run through these names. You can see it, and we'll talk about a couple of these guys. Pence went 0 for 11. Crawford's 1 for 10. McCarthy's 0 for 8. Dubon 2 for 14. And they've had 7 errors in the field so far. And Wilmer Flores has 2 on his own that have led to a total of 5 unearned runs. And when you're a team that has to win games by the skin of your teeth, you can't give away runs.
Yeah.
But what do you guys think the problem with Pence and Crawford is? Are they pressing? Are they just not good anymore? What the hell's going on?
Well, Crawford, I think, is just not a great hitter. Pence had a resurgence, obviously, but he might be pressing being put in the DH role because normally and maybe the DH role is not great for him. Like Pablo seems to embrace it. Pence maybe just is the kind of guy who likes to trot out there with his glove on every inning and not just sit in the dugout waiting for his at bats. He's kind of an anxious guy, right? And having him just sit there waiting on at bats, I don't know. Maybe here at home he'll just be down there pounding balls into the net, but
yeah,
I don't know what the facilities are like in Dodger Stadium. So, yeah, I think Pence I'm not too concerned about because he hit 297 last year, and I think he'll be somewhat in that ballparkish. Like in our stadium, not that good, but somewhere in the 270-ish range seems about right where I'll end up. Sucks to start 0-11 though.
It does. Pence had a good spring. He had a good summer camp. He revamped his swing with Texas last year, and obviously he was an all-star. All these things happened. So I do think it's a little bit of a pressure of him coming back to San Francisco. even though he's not playing in front of the fans. It could be a DH thing, even though he did DH in Texas. But it might be this kind of like the Giants took another chance on me. I'm 36 years old. They signed me back here. And, maybe there is a little bit of that pressure. Crawford himself, he had revamped his swing. He was hitting over 400 in spring training. Everyone said, oh, my God, maybe this guy's, going to get it. And look, 10, 11 at-bats. We can't say anything about these guys. We can't. I mean, most people say it takes 100 at-bats to really start to feel out what a player might do for the year. Now, granted, this is a shorter year. You're not going to get 500 at-bats. But that said, they should reach about 100 for the year, hopefully. So I'm not too worried yet, but Crawford in the last couple of years has shown us, hitting 220, 230, that he just, unless his revamped swing really does kind of produce something here in the next few weeks, he's probably just going to be around that ballpark again of 220, 230, good defensive shortstop. Pence, you don't know, right? He was an all-star last year. He had a resurgence, but he had really a couple of weak years in San Francisco the year before that. So there's always the possibility that he regresses back to that mean, and it would be unfortunate, but we're all rooting for Pence and Crawford. I mean, we love these guys.
Absolutely, yeah.
These are the links to the 14 and 12 championship seasons. We want to see them do well. So I think they're going to have their moments. I think they're going to break through. But overall, at this point, even though the All-Star game was canceled for this year, I don't think they're going to be All-Star quality this year.
Yeah, but we need Crawford defensively more than ever right now. Because you could see the inexperience out there on display in full force. And even some experienced guys are not making the best decisions, but kind of collectively, we need to have a shortstop we can rely on, right?
Well, and he was pulled by Kapler in a tie game. It was game 1, I believe, when it was a tie game, and a righty was pitching, and he was pulled, and it was a little shocking.
I think it must have just been he didn't like the way he was swinging,
Yeah, and so that's when people started asking that question of like, Bochy wouldn't have done that. Most managers wouldn't have done that. It wasn't a lefty on lefty kind of thing where that's why you pulled him. It was he had a righty on the mound. So why did you pull him? So, that hasn't been answered directly. I know they've had conversations. I listened to him on KMBR, and he said him and Kapler had a conversation about this, and he left it at that. But Kapler's also done the other things that we talked about earlier is starters are getting pulled early. Tonight, of course, Shark went 4 innings, gave up 5 runs. You understand why he was pulled. But Cueto and Smiley and Logan Webb, although Logan Webb got, into a little bit of trouble in that 5th inning. Why is he just not letting these guys go longer because it's the 2nd/3rd time through the lineup and he's got a deep bullpen? So he's just riding it because he's just playing the percentages. Because the other thing is the old school mentality, especially with a starter who wants, I know wins are overrated. We all know this, but baseball players, especially starters, don't necessarily think that, right? They want their wins. And if they need to go 5 to qualify for a win and they're pulled out in the 5th, that might rock the boat a little bit.
Yeah, but I think this is just he's setting the precedence that this is how it's going to work this season. Like I'm not going to do, if I don't do this now and then suddenly start doing it later, it's like he's throwing everything against the wall and seeing what works. And now
this is what we're doing.
This is how it's going to be. And whether you're Cueto or whether you're Smiley or whatever, you're out there. And look, maybe you're no-hitting somebody and you'll stay out there. But once you've gotten to a certain pitch count or times through the lineup is a better way to kind of measure it, right? Because historically we see that like the 3rd time through the lineup is when they start hitting guys, right? So maybe that's just the plan. Like you get 2 times through the lineup, and then we start moving on. We got our other guys. We come in. We give each of them 1 inning. It's an interesting idea. And if we had a stronger roster, it would be easier to tell if it's like correct. But with what we've got, it's going to be hard to tell if we're seeing real results or if it's like that's what's tough. It's like we're also putting in essentially like a bunch of maybe AAA level guys to do this against major league teams. So but I don't know. I like it. I say go for it. This is the time to do it, right? This is the season to do something weird.
I'm with it. What do you think, Eric?
I don't know. I totally cut out for the last 2 minutes.
Yeah, Eric was MIA for a while there.
Yeah, I was. All of a sudden, my screen went black. I asked you guys a question. My screen went black. I lost everything.
No worries.
So I'm just not going to touch anything anymore. I'm not even opening the notes anymore. I'm just going to roll with it.
Just got to upgrade your system there.
Man,
all right,
I need to go get upgrades. This is crap. I mean, my microphone's not sounding as good as it should be. I need to win another couple poker tournaments and shit. I'll have a studio and everything.
Sure.
You know,
honestly, dude, for like $100, you could have a pretty decent setup.
Yeah, no, definitely, for sure. All right,
you just gotta know the right things to get, and we can help you with that.
Then you gotta tell me that. All right, cool. Let's move on.
All right, so we talked about this last week. We don't want to get extremely political again, but we have to talk about it. It's here. It's all over social media. People just keep bringing it up. I mean, I personally have no problem with these players taking a knee. In fact, I just kind of it's not even to the point where I'm like, I'm so proud of them. I am proud of them, but it's just like it's becoming kind of more background now that we're 3, 4, 5 games into the season. A lot of players are doing it, including Mookie Betts of the Dodgers, who just signed that crazy 12-year contract with the Dodgers. And to see the comments on social media over and over and over again of people saying they're disrespecting the flag. I'm no longer a Giants fan. I'm not buying anything. I'm not watching Major League Baseball. I mean, first of all, those are a bunch of child adults that are going to still watch baseball. They're just saying this on social media to get a rise. But, at the end of the day, it's during the national anthem. The reason they're doing it is to highlight social injustice and, racism and police brutality in America. They're not disrespecting the flag. And if they say that they are not disrespecting the flag, how can you say that they are? You may interpret it as such, like you may be offended, but that's not their intent. It's kind of like an argument I get into with my wife or something like that. Like, you were so mean to me. Why did you snap at me? You were condescending me. And I was like, no, I said this because of this. I don't know why, but it's something that kind of bugs me a little bit, where it's not, to me, that big of a deal either way. I'm glad they're doing it. But for the people who are so outraged by this, whether if it's trolls, I disregard, but people who are honestly going to stop watching baseball or not being Giants fans or whatever it may be, this is where we're heading. This is where society is heading. And if you look at the past of, history tells us when these movements happen, there is a progression forward. There is never a regression back. Civil rights movement,
but
women's
there is always
voting.
Pushback. Like historically, pushback is going to happen.
Always pushback.
This is the pushback, and
inevitably it always moves forward.
The progression happens, but there's never like this. Oh, we just easy and free. Like
not at all.
We need change, and everyone goes, "You're right. You're right. We should be less racist."
We should be less racist.
There's always a little bit of pushback, and in this case, it's it's a lot of pushback, and it's very vocal. But I do want to say one thing though, that there's also pushback against Coonrod, which I disagree with because I
disagree with that too.
To not kneel. Yep. If we want to make the argument that the players are fully allowed to kneel, he's also fully allowed not to, and say why. I disagree with his reasoning.
Right.
But he's allowed to. This is the thing. Like if I'm going to say that these players should be allowed to kneel and it should have no bearing on your fandom of the Giants as an organization, I'm going to say that also you're fully allowed to say, like Drew Brees is allowed to say what he said. Then he had some conversations. He changed his mind. Coonrod may have some conversations, but he's doing his thing too, the same way. So I don't want to take anyone's voice away.
It goes both ways every time. Everybody has their own voice, and they're allowed to use that voice. That's part of what I hate to use this phrase, but that's part of what makes this country great sometimes, is because we can all use those voices. I don't agree with Sam Coonrod, but he has the prerogative to do what he wants. But by not being informed and giving that as your reason, I think that's what ticked off people. That's what ticked off me. It was just like, in one breath, he said it was because of his religion and God, and then in the next breath, he said it was because of Marxism and the nuclear family. And it's like, I got no problem with you, just pick one or the other, man. Like, just stick with it. Like,
but in his mind, they're all representative of the same thing, right?
Right.
But here's the thing.
That, and that's where he comes from.
So when players kneel to protest police brutality, and then people say, well, you should leave the country, It's like, well, those are the people who don't understand what America's actually about, right? And so when Coonrod doesn't kneel because he doesn't agree, we should not also then say, then get the hell out of the country. Like, you know what I mean? It's like that's, I think, where it's like you gotta, the progression, like you said, Chad, is going to happen. The pushback's also going to happen. But like, it's important to me to kind of be on the right side of history in this particular scenario.
Exactly.
And the right side is also not to silence people who disagree with me. It's to like engage them, and have the necessary conversations, right?
No, that's a really good point you bring up, because when Coonrod had this statement, and I know he talked about Marxism and the nuclear family, but one of his main points, and they quoted it, of course, a ton, is that I only kneel before God, or I only kneel to God, that kind of thing. And a lot of Christians came out, and Giants fans who are Christians came out and said, he's my new favorite player, I'm getting his jersey, this is what it's all about, and all that stuff like that. And it did strike me, because even though I didn't agree with his sentiment like you guys didn't, it didn't offend me. Like, I'm like, okay, good for him.
I'm not going to root against him when he's pitching.
Right.
Like,
yeah, he was the only one to not kneel during that MLB kind of,
this was
initiative.
Before the national anthem too.
Yeah, it was before the national anthem.
It wasn't even during. Yeah.
It wasn't even during. It was where all the players knelt with that black rope sheet thing or whatever to honor Black Lives Matter, which of course we're all for, but he just didn't want to kneel because he only kneels before God. And that didn't upset me at all. And I was trying to flip my view, going, okay, so someone who sees a player kneeling for the national anthem, why can't they just take the tact of, well, I don't agree with that, but that's their right, and I'll just move on and be a Giants fan.
Speech.
Yeah, it's
for freedom of speech.
To me, it's not a big deal, right? Just move on and go, I disagree, but whatever.
A logic course in college, clearly, because if A, then B.
Yeah.
Is like they can't wrap their head around that, right? If I believe in freedom of speech, therefore I must also believe in your right to kneel during the national anthem.
Yeah, it's a bizarre thing, and obviously the social discourse is at an all-time high right now for many other reasons, but this just kind of adds fuel to the fire. But I think you're going to see a lot more. There's been a lot of major league players that have knelt. I mentioned Mookie Betts and others, but the NFL's coming. And they're allowing the NFL, if it does actually launch and play,
yeah, right.
they're going to be wearing decals on their back of their helmets. And right now, there are some prominent players that are saying they're going to kneel for the national anthem, despite all the other stuff that Roger Goodell put in a couple of years ago, saying, well, if you want to kneel, you got to go in the locker room and just hide during the national anthem and all that stuff. But now Goodell's like in support of kneeling. So I don't know. It's going to be really interesting if the NFL actually does start. Of course, the NBA, same thing. They're going to be wearing whatever they want with approval on the backs of their jerseys. So
there's
things like
a certain number of approved statements, right?
Right, like Black Lives Matters and things like that they're going to be able to wear. And we've never seen an NBA player kneel, and I know they've already started the games, but I just that could happen, I guess, but.
I don't
it's
think
interesting.
they feel they need to because of how their league handles the conversation. I mean, they Black
the
Lives
commissioner
Matter on the
is
court.
way better about this stuff, right?
Yeah, he is. Plus, I mean, they also, let's be honest, basketball is what, 85% black?
Yeah.
MLB has what, 9%, 10%? And that's the thing, is they talk about black people in that sense, but they don't throw in the Dominican, the Venezuelan, the black guys from different places, and so those aren't included in those statistics, and so it makes it seem like baseball has a problem because we only have 9% of the sport is black, but it's not really true. It's really more like 45% when you look at the amount of I'm watching Pablo receive a throw right now. He is my example of that. Sammy Sosa, well, used to be, is my example of that. David Ortiz.
Very nice. Nice poke.
Yeah, Juan Uribe, Edgar Renteria. Like, there's a million names.
So it's not like there's absolutely no problem. MLB doesn't have an ethnicity problem. You know what I mean? But they don't necessarily know how to tackle the conversation because these guys are not talking the same way an Andrew McCutchen would. Because Andrew McCutchen has experienced the systemic racism that has happened in our country. These guys, they didn't get to our country until they were 20, 21 years old, and they've been in a baseball bubble for most of it, so they don't really even know what it's like.
You live in the Dominican your whole life, you don't necessarily experience racism for being Dominican, right?
Right.
And then, then you come to America and all of a sudden it's like, oh, it's different.
Yeah, it's different.
And so I think it's good that they, feel like they have a voice right now too, because the minorities in baseball are like, hey, we're here too. But I mean, the fans of baseball more than any other sport except for hockey are probably mostly white.
Yeah. No,
I mean, look at us.
Sure.
White.
Very true.
Even our guests, white.
But like the stuff you said about football changing like their policy on it and stuff, that is like part of the progression you talked about. That is happening, and it's like that they were initially pushing back. They're pushing back less. There's going to be the pushback, and then let's fast forward to maybe 10 years from now. There's going to be less. It's going to be more people. Like right now, you're seeing if you do a poll, more people are supporting Black Lives Matter than opposing it, right? Whereas the first few times that we had protests around this, and the actual phrase started to become commonly used, there were a lot of people who were super against it and just did not want to hear it, right? So it's just time. Time needs to happen.
Yeah, and
it's unfortunate that it takes so much of it, but
it does. I think
again, like all I can do is be the part of it that's on the good side, right? Like being like supportive of ending systemic racism and racism as a whole, and that's all I can really control. Trying to have the conversations, but it's tough. It is tough. I have definitely had my moments on Facebook where I get a little vitriolic with people because I get real sick of their bullshit. But I'm trying to do that less and less and be a little more, I don't know, like have a conversation instead of an argument, right?
I will say
that's the key.
First of all, there's definitely a period of education, and we've all gone through this. I think there are many things in our own lives, whether it be now or 10 years ago or 20 years ago, that we initially heard and initially pushed back on it based on institutional racism, how we were raised, stereotypes, whatever it may be. But I think at least us three have some ability to pause, listen, educate ourselves, read, listen, whatever, and then go, oh shit, that's what they mean by that. Now I get it. And because most of us have not experienced the direct, oppression and racism that blacks and other minorities have faced. So it does take that open ear. And I also would say that because of social media, it definitely opens up these channels a lot more than, 20 years ago when we used to just talk in college and, there were a bunch of racist jokes and horrible things said that never made it to the internet. You're like, wow, I didn't know that guy was such a racist. But the same thing is happening now with social media, where there are people I've connected to that I've known for years, and they'll post shit. I'm like, oh my God, they're racist. Like
this is what you think, bro?
This is what you think. Like, you're freaking racist. Like, it is bizarre to see how some people just, their brain works. And I know they're thinking the same thing about me. They're thinking I'm like a snowflake libtard. I want everyone to be free and all this crap, which of course is the farthest thing from the truth. But it's interesting. But anyway, it's just a social experiment in baseball this year. It's brand new to us, and they don't have to do this in front of fans, which I think, some of the reactions of a live audience might have been interesting to see.
I think that's really part of why it took off for MLB baseball. They have this bubble to do it in.
Yeah.
And it's funny because the Giants are over here making history. They've got the first female coach. So they think I think that's why the Coonrod thing was such a big deal around the Giants, is because it was all this positive pub about the Giants, and Gabe Kapler, the son of activists, Alyssa Nacken on the roster as a coach, so there's all this positive pub coming out of the Giants. And then after opening night, we're all talking about Sam Coonrod, and it was just, it was kind of, like ridiculous that we had to even have that conversation in the first place, because as we said, you got to respect that choice. And this is part of the pushback. You said it, Willie. The NFL never was like this. Colin Kaepernick was run out of the league for doing the things they are now promoting.
Yeah, sure.
And that's where things have finally changed.
I mean, the Giants were also the team of Aubrey Huff, so it's not like the Giants are immune to having
Well, I mean, at least they distanced themselves. At least they said last year, no, buddy, you don't need to come back.
Yeah. I still follow him on social media, on Twitter, because he's like a car accident. I just do.
The shit he says is just insane. Yeah.
I have to.
Clearly gone down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, he has.
I'm sure he believes in QAnon and all that stuff. That like
Oh yeah.
That the deep state is Donald Trump is fighting them every day, left and right. Yeah.
All right, so Eric,
that's the thing though. It's like if you are super hardcore on either side, then you're probably a little crazy, right? There's like always like
both sides,
some more space in the middle to be reasonable, and that's where I consider myself
on both sides.
Sure,
no doubt. So Eric, you mentioned Listenakin, and we talked about her for the preseason, but as of opening day, she became the first full-time woman coach in Major League Baseball history. So her jersey was sent to Cooperstown as being put on display. And, as a father of a 14-year-old daughter who plays softball, she is extremely proud and happy. And I love to see this. And I'm very happy. And for those who don't think she's qualified, she was, an All-American at Sac State, softball player, all that stuff. She has the knowledge. She knows how to play the game. She's absolutely qualified for it. There are scouts and even coaches and even managers that never played at the highest level. So don't make that a qualification for a woman.
If that was a qualification, we wouldn't be doing a podcast, right?
well, that's just us, but
I'm just saying. I mean, people can have baseball knowledge without playing.
Joe Madden. Joe Madden never played in the major leagues, but he's managing Major League Baseball teams, that kind of thing, right? Where it's
was just watching
general managers never played, right?
The Last Dance the other day, and there's like a whole thing about Jerry Krause, and like that guy clearly was not a sports icon playing like basketball at the height of whatever, you know what I mean? And he put together a 6-time championship team, obviously.
Come on, he didn't put together. I mean, he made it. All right, forget it. Jerry Krause,
he was there before all the guys were there.
I know, but I mean, Michael Jordan was putting.
He also tore it down, but he put it together too.
I know, but he also tore it down again too early, just because of his own. I'm sorry.
Sure,
as a Bulls fan, I have a hard time.
I'm saying that guy put it together. You don't get the 6.
You're right, though. He totally
Maybe you
did.
Get
he
10.
made the right trades.
Maybe you get 10 if he doesn't get in his own way, but you don't get the 6 without him.
Krause was a baseball scout, and so using him is actually a great example, because think about all the baseball scouts that find all the great kids that play that might be playing in, Timbuktu High School in backwoods Wisconsin. Those guys don't necessarily get seen without scouts, and people trust those scouts, and generally those scouts didn't play Major League Ball either, and people have no idea that that's who's discovering talent. That's why I like sticking around baseball. I feel like I have an eye for scouting. I feel like I see certain things on certain angles and things like that. Certain people just have knacks for certain things. That's why Farhan's the general manager and vice president of the San Francisco Giants without ever playing baseball.
Yep. And obviously there is definitely some validity to having experience, right? Like most managers are former players. And I think at that level, that there is an advantage to having been somebody who played the game, but it's certainly not a requirement. We've seen that, plenty of people. But by the way, why does it even matter that we're talking about whether it's a requirement? Because she did play. She is a player.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It just wasn't Major League Baseball, right?
All she has to be is somebody who's good enough at her job right now, and clearly she is. So
I love
Farhan Zaidi never played any organized ball. It's like, come on.
I mean, it was awesome. Kapler sticking her out there to coach first base the whole time. I've read a lot about how apparently her and Antoine Richardson have a great relationship, like a brother-sister relationship. So she almost said she feels like she's out on the field with them, and they all seem to get along with her. They really, really do. So she's just another, person in the clubhouse.
She's
Nothing
just
more.
Another coach. Yep.
Their coach. She's one of the guys. I hate to say she's one of the guys because it makes it sound so, you know what I mean?
That's a
so
euphemism. Yeah.
And we're not Barstool, but she is. She's one of the guys because she's one of the team. She's one of the team.
Like, it'll be nice when you don't have to talk about the fact that she's a female coach,
right?
But we're not there yet. So it's, obviously, like, you do have to talk about it, right? Like, there was a time where there's Jackie Robinson, and you're an idiot if you're like trying to be like, oh, well, we don't. He's just another player. It's like, well, he's the first black player, so we got to mention it and bring it up, and that's part of the progression, right?
I want to talk.
Eventually, we won't have to.
Who knows? Maybe Alyssa's been helping these guys work on some fielding drills because the way they played in those first 2 games in LA, apparently it's contagious because the Padres can't play the field right now. So the Giants have 3 against the Padres, and then Texas comes to town for 3 more over the weekend.
That's right. So it's tonight, and the next 2 against San Diego is their home opener series, and then 3 home against the Rangers. The Giants are down 5-1 right now, but they got runners on second and third with nobody out, and in the bottom of the 6th, and the Padres are making a pitching change. So I'm going to submit a request to cover probably Thursday's game. We'll see what happens there. They allowed me to cover summer camp.
You'll be one of those weird guys who's sitting like all alone in like the 5th row or whatever.
Well, exactly. They have them spread out everywhere, so that'll be interesting.
Hey, if it works, I might come up there in a month. So
yeah,
hell yeah.
Why not? Right? If it works, then I get to go to a game. That said, I will be as far as talking about our recording schedule. We want to record every week. I'm going to be on vacation next week, Sunday through Thursday or so. So Eric and I will talk offline, but hopefully we can do Friday or Saturday if possible to try and squeeze one in before we can do the next week. But of course, Willie always has an open invitation back. I know he's got a lot of streaming going on right now, which he can talk about in a second, but you can follow us collectively at TortureCast. You can follow us individually, myself at ChadK21, Eric at 2OutHits, that's with the number 2, Willie at Willie Dills. And Willie, why don't you tell them what you got going on Twitch these days?
So twitch.tv/Willie Dills, where you can find me streaming mostly Hearthstone. There's a new expansion coming out pretty soon, but we might be doing some other interesting games. I've been trying to figure out if I can figure out how to play, because Ty, my best friend here in Austin, has been streaming a lot of MLB The Show on Twitch as well, and it looks so damn fun that I'm like trying to figure out how I could play it. They don't have it for PC, so I'm trying to figure out if I can get like an emulator or like, I don't know, something so that I can play it. Certainly not buying a PS4 to do it. But maybe if I can find like a super cheap used one or something like that. But he's been playing a lot of that, and it looks so damn fun. So I might try to dip my toes into playing some baseball on stream as well, which is just super cool. Because I could go play like the 2010 Giants or the 2012 Giants and relive the good glory days. So yeah, maybe some of that will be happening.
That's some fun stuff. I don't have this year's the show, but I have 2 years ago, I think I have 17 or 18 the show.
Not much has changed as far as gameplay, by the way.
Yeah.
So
I still play it. It's a lot of fun. I love that game. So but yeah, it's good stuff. You do need a PS4. Of course, the PS5 is coming out in a couple of months or a few months. So yeah, may not want to burn the $200 on that for a few months. Doesn't make
I'm generally a console behind though, so
yeah.
I'm not really a console player. I play on PC, and it's just some games don't exist on PC.
Yeah,
pisses me.
Exactly. Eric, you got anything going on?
No, I got nothing to pimp right now. Life is good though, so I hope everybody else out there's life is good, because my heart is full of love right now. So all I want to do is share love. It's pretty freaking awesome. That's all I really have to pimp is love.
Hell yeah, Eric's got a lot of good family stuff going on, and follow him on Twitter for follow him on Twitter for all of his poker endeavors. It's actually a lot of fun because I used to play a lot of poker. I don't really anymore, so I kind of live vicariously through his.
It's not
Henderson
just poker,
tournaments.
it's video poker too.
Oh yeah,
I got gambling stuff going on all the time, people. If you like gambling stuff, seriously, follow me. I live in Vegas now. I'm at the casino 3-4 times a week. I hit quads on apparently. I
saw that with the aces. Yeah.
Yeah, I hit quads apparently like 3 times a night sometimes, so it's possible.
What?
You know what I mean? It's just fun. Yeah, oh my god, on the video poker machine.
Play. I was gonna. Like not live poker, because I was gonna say most of the
shit, man. No, I haven't hit
the high hand bonuses, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, ours has high hand. There's all sorts of promos where I play, but no, I play video poker to come down and drink beer, and it's just fun to like hang out and press
video
buttons.
Poker apparently you can actually grind, but the way you win is not necessarily winning. It's by breaking even, but spending so much that you get a lot of money in like perks, like free hotel rooms and free buffets and blah blah blah. And so there's people who like are professional video poker players by like grinding perks, and then I guess trading them in for money somehow.
Oh,
I don't know.
really?
It's very
Yes. All I can say for anybody, I'm not trying to push you to lose your money, but if you want to make anything ever playing video poker, max bet.
Oh,
max bet.
Yeah, you got to do that. $1.25 every hand. There you go.
Every single time. And if you're rolling to the dollar machines, then there's $5 a hand. I haven't done that yet. I'm not freaking crazy.
A little too much with me, yeah, for me. All right, so you can also check us out, like us on Facebook, where we streamed this podcast live tonight, and I think we're going to go forward doing this every episode, because why not? You might as well look at our ugly mugs, and then we'll have a video record of
I promise I'll find a better studio than my bedroom soon.
Exactly. So, and as we leave, 5-2, San Diego leads. Hunter Pence just popped out to the catcher. With runners on
Flores
the corners.
beat out a double play ball.
Yeah. So
to give
Pence
us
is
a
now
chance
0 for 12.
One out.
the young
But
season.
we need Hunter to pick us up a little bit there with only one out and a runner on third.
Yeah,
He's supposed to
not
get
so
that
good.
guy.
Supposed to get that guy in. And you can check out all of our podcasts and, of course, our episodes at torturecast.com. So, for Willie Dills and for Eric Nathanson, this is Chad King signing off for episode 200. We'll see you in episode 201, hopefully next week. Until then, a boom.